Hey friends, I'm Jordan, but most people call me Jay, and I'm the host of the I Am More Than podcast. I'm a professional model, former Miss Arizona USA, entrepreneur, and confidence coach. But beyond those titles, I'm just an overly curious woman learning to become the best version of myself. And I'm hoping this podcast can help you do that too. I struggled a lot with my mental health and confidence in my early 20s and went on a deep dive into improving those areas of my life. I share about my journey on this podcast, as well as highlight the stories of admirable women who are just like you. We learn from each other, laugh, and cry, and I believe you'll grow after every episode, because let's face it, when we realize we aren't alone, life becomes a whole lot easier. If you're a multifaceted woman interested in improving your confidence and mental health while being entertained, you've come to the right place. We're so happy to have you part of the More Than movement. What's up, babes? Welcome back to the I Am More Than podcast. I am so excited to be talking into this mic and connecting with you guys again. You may have noticed we took a little bit of a hiatus the month of August because I finally launched my confidence course, The Fundamentals of Confidence, and was just pouring a lot of time and energy into that. We also went traveling for really the first time that I've really stepped on a plane since February. And we were in Minnesota and then Boston and then Rhode Island. And it's just been a little bit of a whirlwind, but podcasting is my absolute favorite part of my job, this job that I've created for myself. So this is the stuff that absolutely fuels me so much. So I just poured myself a crisp glass of Sauvignon Blanc. So if you hear me drinking throughout, that is why, because today is a celebratory episode. I can't believe that it's already September. I feel like this year has just absolutely flown by, much more than any other year past. Every month, I just feel like I look up and suddenly it's the end of the month already. But I realized on September 1st, as I was planning out my calendar, holy shit, I'm going to be 30 years old this week, which is just insane. And I typically like to take at least a day leading up to my birthday where I'm completely off my phone, off social media, and I try and just be really reflective of the year that I just had. I try and just remember bits and pieces of every month because I feel like time just goes by so fast, and be really intentional about the lessons that I learned that year. I like to be just a very reflective and self-aware person. That's just my personality. And before ever doing this podcast, it's something that I just always did in private. I never shared any of those lessons with anybody. And then last year, I released a podcast episode talking about the lessons that I had learned in a year, and you guys absolutely loved it. So I knew I wanted to do another type of episode with just reflections from that year, but it built into something so much greater when I actually sat down, because it's just different closing the chapter on my 20s. Turning 29 was just a trip for me because I just felt like I had lived so many different, very different, unique lives in that decade. 19 is really when my quote unquote career had taken off. If you guys are new around here, I was 19 when I had lost all that weight, competed in a fitness competition, then won Miss Arizona USA and was at Miss USA and signed my modeling contract. And then once all of that was kind of stripped away, went into a deeply depressive episode trying to figure out who the hell I was in a total identity crisis. And then I slowly started working on this self-help era of my life and started a blog that ended up taking off. Shortly after, I moved to New York City to try to become a professional model with my newfound confidence. Ended up getting signed finally. That was a journey in and of itself. And became a full-time working model in New York City when I was, I think 24 to 27, I think I was in New York, something like that. And once I had finally like accomplished everything that I thought I wanted my whole life, it just didn't feel the way that I thought it would feel. And that's when I really started diving into my mental health journey. And you guys have heard me talk a lot about that on this podcast. And I feel like taking a year out of my 20s to do nothing but like really, really focus on my mental health just changed my life more than is a byproduct of that transformation. Because right when I started like finishing that era, so when COVID happened and I launched the I Am More Than podcast and More Than, and then I got engaged and then we moved to Texas and then we got married and then I started the confidence course. Like there's just been so many very monumental things happening and just a lot of changes that I feel like I've experienced in a decade. And we all experience so much change in a decade of our lives, right? Like you would never compare your 15-year-old self to like your 5-year-old self. So it's weird when I start thinking about like my mindset of who I was 10 years ago compared to who I am now. But I just feel like two completely different people that learned a lot of lessons a lot of times over before I finally understood it. And I like to share that wisdom and that wealth of knowledge with you guys because I know so many of our listeners are in their 20s, or even if you're in your 30s or 40s, I think you can still really resonate with a lot of these lessons that you either have already learned yourself, or maybe some of these lessons like strike a nerve or a light bulb goes off in your mind too, and it allows you to learn this lesson to a further extent, if that makes sense. So I sat down to go through just like the top lessons of the year. And then it blossomed into like the top lessons of my 20s. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do like 30. And then the list just kept growing. And I couldn't consolidate anything because I don't want to leave any value out for you guys. So I kind of broke it down into sections. And for the first time ever, you guys know when I normally record podcasts, I just do it on a whim. I don't have any type of notes or any type of structure. And I actually wrote down notes of like the different categories of lessons just so I don't forget things. And to be completely honest, I have no idea where we're going to go with this, how long it's going to go, but I know there will be some gold nuggets throughout. So just buckle up, pour yourself a glass of wine or a mocktail or whatever you fancy, and let's get into it. Let me take a quick sip. That's good. Okay, like I mentioned, on August 1st, I launched the confidence course, The Fundamentals of Confidence, that I've just been pouring so much of my time and attention and heart and energy and research into. And I feel like I was so laser focused on just accomplishing that goal that then when the goal happened, it was so humbling, so fulfilling. And I really do feel like it's been a culmination of everything in both my personal and my professional life that has led to this course. So this past month has actually been very therapeutic in a way for me. And also I feel very vulnerable in the stuff that I shared throughout that course. So it's been a balance of like being so excited for it to be shared with the world and also still parts of me being like, well, am I oversharing? Like, am I doing too much? Which I am a chronic oversharer. I feel like pretty much anybody with a podcast kind of is an overshare. So you guys get it. But I want to share some of like the hard lessons that I've learned throughout my career. And a lot of these lessons are like things I'm repeatedly telling myself as well. So I want to start with the lessons in career. So I broke this down into, 4 sections. So I have overall lessons, lessons in relationships, lessons in career, lessons in health and wellness, and then what I'm looking forward to most in my 30s. But since we were just talking about career, maybe we just start there. Because whatever stage you guys are at, the majority of our listeners, you're out of college, you are starting a career, maybe you've switched up careers, maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom, maybe you're trying to figure out what the hell you are doing and you're doing a job that does not fuel you in any way. I feel like I've been in so many of those places other than stay-at-home mom. I'm a dog mom, but can't really correlate the two of those. But I've been on every end of the career spectrum in the last decade. So when I was getting into my 20s, I was just hustling, doing as many different jobs as I could. I was working at a place called My Fit Foods while going to school, and also working as a cocktail waitress in downtown or Old Town Scottsdale. And then when we went into pageant stuff, I was looking at all these like business opportunities that were kind of being thrown at me just to like put my name on something, and ended up like really not capitalizing on that chapter. So then after the pageant stuff, I went back to a 9-to-5. Well, didn't go back to, I started a 9-to-5 for the first time and had this corporate job, was in college, something that just really didn't fuel me. And then when we moved to New York, I was working a million side hustles just to try and get by financially before modeling money came in. And then having steady modeling money that I could live off of. And then COVID happening and the modeling money really being taken away for a period of time there. And then doing virtual stuff. And then becoming an entrepreneur, which the entrepreneur side has without a doubt been the most difficult part of any career experience that I've had, especially in the industry that I've chosen to go into, because there is literally no manual for the stuff that I'm doing, because it's not like I niched down, right? More Than is very broad. A confidence course is very broad. Then selling merchandise, it's very broad, that I just don't have anybody in my life in particular that I can look to and be like, hey, help me out. Like no really clear direction. And that's one of the many, many lessons that I learned, is the importance of surrounding yourself with people that you aspire to be like. And whether that's having a mentor, or whether that is going to community events with like-minded women, or if that's putting yourself out there into an atmosphere that you're not totally comfortable with because you feel like you're the dumbest person in the room, that's probably where you should be, because it's situations like that that are going to propel you forward. And I feel like I've learned that lesson a lot being an entrepreneur, because I will go to these events, and even if I like hand out my business card in an industry that's not just podcasters or people that are kind of in this space, I have felt very not embarrassed isn't the right word. I have felt like I couldn't properly explain what I do, because I'm doing so many different things that all make sense. They all coincide. But for people that don't get it, like they just don't get it. And there's been a lot of people being like, oh, that's cute. So like, do you make money? Or people basically just being like, huh, and totally not taking me seriously. And then you have the flip side of going into atmospheres of people in the podcast space and in the influencer space and in all of these different industries that get it. And I'm such a small fish in a large pond that trying to get their attention and show my work has also been difficult. So I've noticed that it is so fueling for me to put myself in environments where people are far more successful than I am. And I do that intentionally because I know the fire it lights under my ass. So I think it's really important to just continuously put yourself in circumstances and situations where you will grow. Even if that growth is uncomfortable, that's okay. It's going to be fueling for you. And it also can lead to more creative ideas, or it can lead to a mentorship or a friendship. Like you never know. So just putting yourself out there in your career has been the biggest thing, especially because so many of the guests that we've brought onto this show and the people that I've collaborated with and worked with, so much of it has evolved over just like cold outreach. And I've learned that rejection is 100% just redirection. And it sucks in the moment to get so much rejection and to hear no so much. But I do feel like I developed a really thick skin while being in the modeling industry that no really doesn't faze me. I'm almost more surprised if somebody says yes. But then on the flip side, the other half of me is like, well, why wouldn't they say yes? So I'm like constantly at war with myself. But just knowing that whatever you are going for, if you get rejected, if somebody says no, especially in the career space, it can be really discouraging. But just know that just because one door is closing, there's potential for so many more to open. So like, just don't get so down and so hard on yourself. And I'm sharing that with you just as much as I'm telling it to myself. Another lesson that I've really learned, especially in this last month, and I'll be like ultra vulnerable with you guys here, is that there's no such thing as an overnight success. And you can pour your heart and your soul into something that you're passionate about, and you can't expect for everybody else to be just as passionate about that. So support looks different. Support from your friends and your family is going to look different than you probably think it will look. Support from your community, support from whatever it is for you might look a little different than what you're thinking. But I just keep telling myself that everybody had to start somewhere. You know, back to my point of like, there's no such thing as an overnight success. I feel like you see these people that have just absolutely blown up, and we put them on this pedestal on a different level than us, and just wonder like, what is the it factor that they have? I clearly don't have it, and I could never be where they are. An example that I keep using is I love Mel Robbins and Ed Milet. They're two of my ultimate role models in both the podcast space and in just like the self-help space. I get so much wisdom and value from their content, and I admire them so much. And when I went to go publish the confidence course, it was like, even if this doesn't take off the second I hit publish, and if I don't have 1,000 people buying it right away, I had to remind myself that even them, the giants in this industry, they had to start somewhere. And they worked up to the point that then when people are just discovering them for the first time, it's like, oh my God, they're this overnight success. Where'd they come from? Where if you look at their track record, they've been doing this for a hell of a long time. I saw this video the other day of, I think it was Morgan Wallen. He was performing this song at a fair in 2016, I believe. It's one of his original songs. And there was literally less than like 50 people in the audience. Nobody knew the words. And then it panned to 2023 while he's on this world tour and everyone is singing his songs and he's selling out stadiums. He's been doing the same thing for a long time. Just people just started picking up and he started gaining momentum. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys too, that even if you're not where you want to be, that doesn't mean that you can't get there. You just can't give up. And that's been the biggest lesson throughout this entrepreneur career for me, is that so many of us have these amazing ideas, but we give up before they gain momentum. Or we wait until we feel quote unquote ready. And newsflash, you will never feel ready. I still don't feel ready sometimes for the podcast. And we've had 4 seasons and 65 episodes. And still sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I just feel like I'm just not ready because it's not perfect. And something that Michael Bostic said when I was at this Dear Media IRL event back in May, is he just kept saying, like, when you have an idea, launch and then adjust, but just launch. And getting feedback from people and just seeing what direction things will take might surprise you. But if you just sit on it, you never know what you actually have. And I just think that's so valuable, because there's countless of you listening right now that have amazing ideas or something that you want to start, but you're holding yourself back because you just don't think that you're quote unquote ready. And I just really want you to hear me loud and clear when I say that day is not going to come. Sometimes you just have to push yourself. And then you also get to see what you're made of. A perfect example of this was back in February, my modeling agency, my mother agent, the agency Arizona, they slid in my email and just said, hey, would you be willing to come back to Arizona for a hosting event? No other details than just that. And I'm like, yeah, I love hosting. What's the event for? Come to find out, it's the red carpet for Shaq's Fun House and the Sports Illustrated Super Bowl party. And I was put on hold for both nights. And I get put on hold for jobs all the time. And I would say like 9 out of 10 times, they don't end up happening. So I tried really hard to not get my hopes up too much, but I was like, this would be such a sick opportunity. I really hope that it happens. And I got confirmed for day 1 of that. So I flew out to Arizona. We booked our flight immediately. I went and got my outfits really quick. I got everything together, and I was contracted to work for the red carpet for Shaq's Fun House on a Friday night. But they did not confirm me for Saturday night for the Sports Illustrated party. And I really wanted to do both. So I went into that night. One, I haven't hosted any type of a red carpet since I was Miss Arizona USA, and that was in 2014. So it's been a hot second. And I also had no idea who the hell would be walking the red carpet. I was given 0 details. I didn't have a guest list. I didn't know who my client even was, who I was going to be representing until I got to Arizona. So I just in no way felt ready. I didn't want to make an idiot out of myself, but I also knew that like I needed to show up and do my best, and I was going to kick it out of the frickin' park, and they would have to bring me back for Saturday night. So as I got there Friday, come to find out I was there on behalf of Talking Stick Resort, who was hosting the entire event. And I made this like little silent promise to myself that I'm like, I'm going to crush it so much that they are going to be begging for me to be here tomorrow. And I'm going to make sure that I'm available. We pushed the flight to come back during the Super Bowl. My sweet husband flew out there with me. He didn't even get to watch the Super Bowl because I'm like, hey, I have to be here if and when they decide to confirm me, because I feel like they will. Lo and behold, they did. And I feel like when you go in with that energy of just why not me in your career and really in every area of your life, you carry a different confidence that is attractive to people. And I'm glad that I showed up and I gave it my best. And honestly, there was a big element of just like fake it till you make it, because you're never going to be totally ready and you're not trained to know who any of these people are, but just make everybody feel comfortable talking to you and see what happens. And it really just reinforced not only this podcast, because that's why they ultimately booked me, is because the booking agent listens to the I Am More Than podcast. Shout out to you. And also just because they knew that I could do it, but I had self-doubt and decided to push through that. And because I did, it was one of the best experiences of my life. So just really lean into the whole doing it even when you're not ready. Okay. I know I'm rambling now. I'm not even sticking to my bullet points. So another bullet point that I have on here is everything is figure outable. And I read this book by Marie Forleo when I first launched More Than back in 2020, because I had no idea what the frick I was doing. I had no idea how to produce, record, edit, market a podcast, but I knew that I wanted to do it. And I didn't have the means to have somebody to teach me. And so I figured it out. And I realized that you're capable of figuring out anything that's important to you. The same goes for this whole confidence course. I wrote an entire curriculum and hired a videographer and rented a studio and flew out my best friend and had a photographer and hired makeup and hair before I even knew where it would be hosted, because I knew I would figure it out. And I ended up finding the platform, figuring out how to upload everything, make it seamless. When something is important to you, you will do everything to figure it out because you are capable of it. But I think so often our like gut reaction is like, no, I could never do that. And I think if there's something that is important to you that you want to make happen, you're going to make it happen no matter what. So if you haven't read that book yet, I highly recommend it. And just really remember that, because I think it's an excuse to say, I could never do that, especially when something is important to you, because you can literally do whatever you put your mind to. All right. The other part that I have on here is to always keep learning. That's been really, really important in the past couple years for me, because I feel like I'm constantly just producing content and putting content out there that by the end of the day, my brain was just kind of mush, and I was like just mindlessly watching TV, which I'm going to get to that point in a hot second. But I felt like I just wasn't like fueling myself with enough material that I needed to learn and to grow. So I ended up investing in this course, the Mind Your Business course by Nitzan, to learn how to scale my social media, because that was important to me. And learning all of her different tips and tricks in an industry that I really still don't know much about. And I've been listening to podcasts when I'm working out, when I go on my hot girl walks, just to constantly feel like I am learning and hearing a different perspective. I think it's really, really important that you are open to other perspectives instead of being closed-minded. And that applies for everything, but especially in your career too, because you're not ever going to have all the answers. There will always be somebody who is smarter and wiser than you. And the best thing that you can do is listen. But on the same token, don't listen to people that you wouldn't take advice from or you wouldn't switch places with, because there's a lot of noise everywhere. And again, this is kind of overall, but just targeted for the sake of this conversation and career, that there's so much noise and so many people are going to be telling you what you should do and blah, blah, blah. The most important thing is to find the people that you actually admire and that you want to learn and grow from, and listen to them, not just all of the talking heads at you all the time, because it can get really, really overwhelming and will also make you just stay stagnant. So just be really careful with who you're taking advice from. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to career is learning how to rest and how to shut off. And I'm talking to myself just as much as I'm talking to you, because I suck at resting. When I say like mindlessly watching TV, I mean like putting on a show and also having my laptop and doing stuff for work, or trying to figure out social media content on my phone, or just constantly doing something. My brain goes a million miles a minute and I don't have an off button. And I don't think most entrepreneurs do have an off button, because it is all consuming. I feel like when you're in a 9 to 5, it's a little bit easier to like shut down that laptop at 5 and be like, I'll get to it tomorrow. And honestly, I envy the people that are in that position, because I think you have a much better work-life balance. But even for people that are in 9 to 5s or entrepreneur space, or just trying to figure out what you're wanting to do, it's so important that you learn how to actually rest and recover. Because when you're rested, that's when more creative ideas are going to come to you. That's how you avoid burnout. And it's just really important to not just be on all the time. We weren't made to be on all the time. So for me, I'm trying really hard to, at least one day, especially on the weekend, I'm taking a total social media break, because that is the first step to resting for me. And I've been really intentional about reading, especially fiction books. Up until this year, I literally never did that. And I've been cranking through like 3 books a month and really enjoying it. So I'll go out and I'll float in the pool, or just get a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and just kind of detach and go read. And I find that that's very restful for me. So take that with what you will, but we weren't meant to be on all the time. Okay. Next subject when it comes to lessons in my 20s that I want to talk about comes to relationships. And I didn't realize how unique or different my viewpoint is when it comes to romantic relationships until recently. I had been promoting my confidence course on TikTok and trying to come up with like strategic ways of how I can reach new audiences, and talking about confidence and self-esteem, the stuff that's important to me. And I did this one-off video about my husband, who was out of town and knew that I get wrapped up in work and probably hadn't eaten lunch. So he had a sandwich delivered to me. And it sparked this thought that when we met, we were 21 years old, and I saw the same qualities in him when he was 21 that have developed so much over the last 9 years. And now as a 30-year-old man, he is just such a fantastic partner, and I respect him so much as a man. And I feel like I saw those same qualities early in our relationship. And I was just telling people on TikTok, just sharing my experience about the fact that it's really important that you see those key characteristics and those quality traits that you need when you're in the dating phase, because those are only going to increase. That's the same for negative traits. You cannot change people and you cannot fix people. So if you're hoping that like the more time passes, like the better they're going to get, that's just not the reality. So anyways, I posted this one TikTok. It's taken off. I think we're at 2 million views now. And my content there's just been a demand more for like dating advice, which is funny to me because I've never looked at myself as somebody that wanted to give dating advice on like a public platform. I feel like I do that so much with like close friends and close family. But I have some people close in my life right now that are navigating some difficult stuff when it comes to relationships. I have somebody very close to me that just got out of a 6-year relationship and being in her 20s, feeling like, what's next? Like, did I waste my 20s? What if I never meet anybody? What if all these questions? And then on the flip side, I have another person very close to me that just turned 30 that just went through a divorce and is navigating the feelings from kind of neglecting the signs that she saw early on in their relationship that she just tried to ignore, hoping that he would just change, and he didn't. And so I have these two very important people to me that I'm watching navigate some really heavy dating stuff. And it's inspired so much in me, and also given me a lot of foresight into stuff that I remember feeling and seeing throughout my 20s when it came to dating, when it comes to like watching friends settle in relationships and watching women neglect themselves and their needs and their wants because they just wanted to be the cool girl for their partner, and then seeing that come full circle where it's no longer serving them and they're now in a divorce. And so I want to share some of the lessons when it comes to dating relationships with you guys on the pod too, just because it resonated with so many people that I wasn't expecting it to. So maybe this will resonate with you too. But I think it's okay to be extremely selective with who you choose to spend your time with. And that applies to all relationships in our lives, but especially when you're dating somebody, it's important that you're seeing the key quality characteristics that you need in that potential romantic dating partner early on. If you don't see it, it's okay to not stick around. I think women have such a maternal instinct that we want to help people grow and we want to help people change. And that is not your job when it comes to a dating relationship. It's just not. And quite frankly, you will end up wasting so much of your time, and it will impact your emotions negatively because you will get so wrapped up in the emotional roller coaster that comes with trying to fix and change somebody when they don't want to. So just if you are single or if you're dating or even if you're in a relationship with somebody right now and it doesn't feel right, don't ignore that. Your intuition is always right. But so many of us don't know how to trust ourselves, nor do we know how to listen to our intuition. So I really want to encourage you to invest more in your 20s in discovering who you are and what's important to you, and get to know yourself. Why do you think, feel, react, act the way that you do? Once you start doing some of that deeper work, getting to know yourself, some of that healing, you're going to change. You're going to grow into somebody that you're going to be really proud of. And I encourage people to do that before you're in a situation where you're in a committed relationship, because so many neglect doing that and they feel like being in a relationship is going to fulfill something for them or it's going to fix something that feels broken inside of them. There's so many that will just be like, okay, next steps, let's get engaged, let's get married, let's have kids, when it hasn't felt right to you because you don't truly know what you want and you don't know what you're looking for. So before you get into that stage of life, if I'm talking to anybody that is not yet in a committed relationship, before you get there, do the work on yourself. You will thank yourself, and you're also going to attract the kind of people that you want to attract in your life, both romantic partners, friendships. Your energy is going to be different when you're healed. And every single one of us can benefit from this self-discovery and this healing. Every single one of us. One more quick lesson when it comes to dating relationships before I'm off my high horse is that relationships, especially healthy relationships, they don't have to be hard. And this was such a foreign concept to me, especially in my 20s, because my parents ended up separating and divorcing when I was in my 20s. So I was an adult to be able to see everything that had been going on, and also seeing their relationship while I was growing up and seeing relationships around me. And I just had this idea that relationships, and especially marriages, were just so hard. And there was so much work that you had to put into it. And it was so exhausting. And quite frankly, it scared the shit out of me. And that's a big reason as to why Brendan and I chose to wait until much later in our 20s, because when we first started dating, I remember him telling me early on, like, I know that you're the woman I'm going to marry. And me being like, I don't even know if marriage is something that that's on the table for me right now or ever, because I just don't want to add something that is so hard into my life. And throughout my relationship with Brendan, it has been easy. And there's been difficult seasons. We've gone through some heavy shit. We've gone through deaths. We've gone through multiple different moves. We've gone through job loss. We've gone through mental health issues. And even in those difficult seasons, my relationship to its core was still one of the easiest relationships I've ever had in my life. There was that mutual respect and love and willingness to be there for one another that made it feel like we had a safe space within each other. And I was a little bit nervous that that was going to change when we got married. And we've been married, it'll be a year in October, which is just insane. I feel like the year has absolutely flown by. But I can say without a shadow of doubt that marriage so far, we will have been together, 9 years in February. Marriage has been my very favorite chapter because it's been so fun. Like, I just get to build this life with my very best friend, and there's no stress of wedding planning. And I have somebody that is always there to support and love and take care of me and fill my cup just like I do for him. There's such a ease to it. And I know that's not everybody's experience. And statistically speaking, people say the first year of marriage is the hardest. And that is just not my experience, probably because we had lived together prior, because we were together for so long prior to getting married. But I just want to give some encouragement out there to anybody that shares that same fear, or if you've had the same experience of just thinking that relationships are so hard. Just know that you should not have to be fighting and emotionally and physically exhausted with the person you are dating. There's so many women that stay in relationships and commit themselves to dating relationships, and that's just not necessary. I think it's one thing to stay in a committed marriage when you are with somebody and they're going through a tough time and it's an exhausting chapter. Like, I commend people for going through those valleys together. But when you're dating, it should not be that hard. So don't confuse relationships being hard with them being right, because that's not always the case. Whew. I feel like I could talk about this for a long time, but we're already almost 40 minutes in and I got to get the ball rolling. So last bullet point that I did have on here when it comes to just dating relationship lessons is just communicate what you're feeling instead of harboring your feelings. I feel like so many, maybe it's just like a female thing, or maybe it's the empath in me or the people pleaser in me, that in the beginning of our relationship, I didn't ever want to like ruffle any feathers. So I would just like keep everything in and not bring it up unless it was like a groundbreaking, huge deal. And over my 20s, I've learned the peace that comes from communicating what I'm feeling when I'm feeling it and then releasing it. And this is probably both a blessing and a curse to Brendan, because I say exactly how I feel. If something like irks me, I'm so quick to be like, hey, not okay with this. This is how I feel. We talk about it right then and there, and then it's done. It's done. There's no harboring. There's no icky feeling that you have to like sit with. So just communicate how you feel. And if you're with somebody that you don't feel like you can do that with, maybe reevaluate if that's the person that you want to be with or not. Okay, now let's talk relationships when it comes to friendships and family relationships, because this is another thing that I've struggled with throughout my 20s, just because I am such a loyal person through and through, to the point that like, if you're in my life, I want to make you feel valued, that I will do whatever it takes to make sure that you're okay and check in on you constantly, and sometimes neglect what I need in order to be there. And that's bitten me in the ass a handful of times, because I didn't understand the concept of outgrowing relationships. There's this quote that people are in your life for a season or for a reason. And that is so freaking true, because seasonal relationships you can learn and you can grow from, and you can love each other and you can be the best of friends. And then when that no longer is serving either one of you, it's okay to move on without there being any ill will or any issues. Like, it doesn't need to be this like groundbreaking conversation and fight. And no, like it's not necessary. It's okay if you outgrow people. And when it comes to family, that's a little bit more difficult, obviously, because they're family. But I've learned that it's really important to establish boundaries with the people that are blood and that are close to you. And it's okay to have relationships with them as long as your boundaries are respected, and vice versa. You need to respect their boundaries. I learned a lot about that through therapy. So I recommend that if you are somebody that is struggling with any kind of family relationships, that you do the work on yourself and how it's affecting you. Because something that I learned is that holding on to negative feelings or hurt from somebody, especially when they are blood or family, it can cut really deep, and it can have a physical and emotional and mental toll on you. And the best thing that you can do, if you haven't already talked to them about it and tried to work it out, the best thing that you can do is learn how to forgive somebody that's not sorry. And that is one of the hardest things I've learned throughout my 20s, but something that has brought me a lot of peace and a lot of comfort, because I truly wish nothing negative on anybody in my life. And that's a really good feeling. And it took me a long time to get there. It took me a long time to establish boundaries. So I think that kind of dives into our mental health topic too, which I'll get into in a hot second. But just know that you have control of who you allow to have access to you. And not everybody deserves such close access. Not everybody deserves to know your story or the extent of your story. And it's okay to protect yourself. And the people pleaser in me like cringes whenever I even think about that, because I would never want to come across like I don't care. But I've learned that in order to save my sanity, boundaries are very, very important. And also just learning to let things go. That's also another very important lesson that I have learned, and I've learned it time and time again. But keeping your circle small, I want to kind of pivot over to friendships too, because keeping your circle small is okay. I've always been somebody that only has a few people that are really, really close to me. And there's been parts of my 20s where I've felt like there's something wrong with that, especially when I was in my earlier 20s and I had been in a sorority and I hadn't really clicked with the majority of the girls that were in my sorority. We just didn't have a lot in common. I really wasn't there for that long of a period of time to build a relationship. But I saw that they had such huge circles and I wanted that. And I wanted to just have party friends and I wanted to just have a group of people that I could call at any time to go out and do stuff with. But something that I've learned is having really tight relationships of people that truly know you is what is going to fuel your soul. And that's what I'm most interested now in navigating into this next chapter of my life and into my 30s, that the friendships that I want to have in my life and that I'm choosing to invest in are people that are reciprocating that energy and are also people that want to be there. And I think that there's something valuable that comes from the kind of friends that match your energy. And rarely is that more than just a handful of people. So if you only have a handful of really, really close friends, that's okay. I think it's smart to keep your circle small. I think it's soul fueling to keep your circle small. And even if you have a lot of like surface level friends to go do stuff with, awesome. Love that for you. Moving to a new city when I was 29 years old, I'm constantly trying to meet new people here in Austin and make new connections and make friendships. And now being a married couple, trying to make married friends for us to all do stuff together. But the friends that I've like clicked with right away are the ones that are like those soul friends that I'm talking about. So just find a handful of those and be open to the fact that they can come in any season. Actually a handful of my closest friends I met in my late 20s. And a lot of the people that were in my life prior to that were not so close anymore. And that's okay. So it's okay to outgrow people. It's okay to outgrow relationships and just wish them well. Okay. Let's move to lessons when it comes to our health and wellness, and mental health is very much in this category because you guys know how passionate I am about talking about mental health and destigmatizing mental health. And as somebody that has struggled my whole life with anxiety, I didn't ever think that freedom from that anxiety was possible. And I also had all my own judgment attached to it, that I would judge myself and I'd be hard on myself. And I knew when I was coming off of, especially my reign in 2014, I was really struggling with both anxiety and depression, but I had too much pride, honestly, to go and talk to anybody, to get myself into therapy. Most importantly, I had a stigma attached to the idea of getting on medication. And that's not something that I did, neither of those things, until my mid-20s is when I finally got myself into therapy and I got on medication, and I just realized that I had been holding myself back from healing, because there's a saying that you can't heal it until you feel it. But if you're stuck in just feeling it and you're not doing anything to heal it, you're doing yourself a disservice. And when we judge ourselves so heavily, saying like, oh, we should be better, all we need to do is like the trend right now, let's just do cold plunges or like go to workout classes or do whatever, and then I'll just be fine. If you're somebody that is struggling with mental health and there's a deeper layer there, you know it. And if this conversation is hitting home with you, you already know it. So I just encourage you to take that next step and actually invest in your mental health, because it is something that will completely alter and change your entire life. That internal work is what's going to unlock the most powerful side to you. And the sooner you do that in life, the sooner you're going to discover your potential. And there's so many people that have never done that and miss out on a lot of beauty that this life has to offer. And a lot of people that are walking around with kind of that victim mentality and that are so trapped by their past because they haven't healed from it. They've only just felt it. Again, that you have to feel it to heal it, but you do have to take a step forward to actually heal it. So I encourage you to not wait to invest in yourself. I understand that one of my biggest things as to why I didn't get into therapy was costs associated with it. And that is a very valid excuse. But there's so many different platforms out there now that can work within any budget. So I highly encourage you guys to just look into it. I have a discount code for BetterHelp through More Than if a digital counselor is something that you're interested in, or a digital therapist, because I just think it's important to get started. It's not going to be forever, but it's important to get started. Okay, again, I feel like I could go on a whole tangent about that, but I just really want to reiterate that you're responsible for your healing. Life is a whole lot less about what actually happens to us and a whole lot more about how we perceive it. And that all starts with our mindset. And there's so much that has happened to us that we couldn't have controlled. And a lot of that builds up and it shapes you to some degree, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. And so learning that you do have the power to make those changes is really freeing. There's a whole lesson in the confidence course, and it's kind of reiterated throughout the entire course on mindset, because I truly do believe that mindset is the foundation for everything. And I relate it to this analogy that, bear with me for a hot second, because if you can't see me watching this right now, you might feel like you're going to get a little lost, but just hang on there. So I always compare it to your mindset being like a beautiful house that it's your dream house. You see from the outside, it has everything you could possibly want. And when you get to the inside, you see that there are some superficial changes that you can make to make the inside match the outside. So you invest all your money into this house, and when you start doing some of the work on the inside, you realize that there's foundation issues. And foundation issues are always the most costly to repair, and they take the most amount of time. But it doesn't make sense to make the inside match the outside and build this beautiful house if there's a possibility it could collapse due to foundation issues. So take that analogy and look at the foundation as our mindset. Because for so many of us, it is built on such unstable ground, and it is filled with limiting beliefs and negative thought loops and really deep stuff that we might even not be totally aware of. And when we try to become better and when we try to invest in ourselves, we'll do a lot of the superficial stuff, right? We'll change our external appearance to be as beautiful as possible, kind of like the analogy of a beautiful house from the outside. That's what draws you in. So we'll make all the changes, but you're left with the inside not feeling quite right. And if you start doing some of the internal work where you're reading self-help books and you're listening to podcasts, you're even listening to this podcast, or you're doing stuff to try and make some changes, you're not actually going to notice that there's that transformation until you get to the root of it. And the root is your mindset. You can't increase your self-esteem. You can't increase your confidence. You will be limited until you get control of that. And I think the most successful people are the ones that have done that work and that fully understand this concept, because there's this part of you that just becomes limitless once you understand that you can take control of your mindset. So I wish I would have done it earlier in my 20s, because I feel like I would have capitalized on a lot more opportunities. I feel like I could have started my entrepreneurship journey a lot sooner, but again, everyone's kind of on their own timeline. I learned it sooner rather than later. But if you are listening right now and you haven't done that work, it's not too late, but you got to do the work. So one of the ways that you can do that, I'd love for you to sign up for the confidence course. We talk so much about this stuff at length. And if you feel like it's deeper than just that, then again, I would get yourself into some therapy. I would start talking to loved ones and just start doing some of that work. There's no shame in it. Because once you learn to trust yourself, right? That's when you're going to learn to listen to your gut. You're going to learn to listen to your intuition. But if you don't trust yourself, you're not going to be able to trust your gut or trust your intuition. So it's all connected. And that was so mind-blowing for me once I finally understood that it's all connected. Because I feel like the more work you do on yourself, especially like the internal work, you'll notice so many external things happening because of it. And I noticed so many new opportunities coming my way without having to force it. And I noticed just being so much more at peace with myself, feeling like I could carry myself with a total newfound confidence. And that's all because of that internal work. So it really does impact every single area of your life. All right, while we're on the topic of health and wellness, I really want to emphasize this lesson because I learned this lesson the hardest frickin' way somebody could learn it. So before I dive in, I got to get a sip of wine because this topic always gets me. There is no such thing as a quick fix when it comes to your health and wellness. And for most of my life, I had really struggled with my confidence in the sense of I was very insecure in my body. And I had gone through a really dramatic health scare and health issues when I was 17, lasting until I was 19, and ended up getting involved with somebody who kind of convinced me that there was such thing as a quick fix. And I really leaned into that as much as I could and started working out like crazy, taking fat burners and doing some crazy dieting, all this stuff to lose a dramatic amount of weight. And it worked at the time, or so I thought, because I had lost 60 pounds in 3 months. But I also had severe metabolic damage that I have dealt with throughout all of my 20s and an onslaught of different other health issues that have come from trying to do a quick fix. Because our bodies aren't meant to do quick fixes. And I think there's so many people, especially now with this whole Ozempic craze. And I don't want to hate on anybody that's doing it, especially if you actually need it. But I know there's just so many influencers and celebrities that are taking it right now and are losing a lot of weight. And I think the messaging that sends to people too is that the smaller you are, the more successful you are, the more significant you are, all these things that I used to believe. But I've also been on the other side of watching the torture that does to your body. And even if something is a quick fix in the moment, there can be a lot of long-term damage. Taking a pill or any type of supplementation or fat burners or whatever diet craze is going around is never sustainable. And by choosing to do that, you are prolonging yourself to actually becoming healthy. Health and wellness is such a long-term game. It's really important to make sure that you start developing a lifestyle that you feel that you can maintain and that you're proud of, because feeling good in your body and having your health is true wealth. It really is, because that's going to allow you to do everything else in life. When you don't have your health, you'll notice that everything else is taken from you because you don't have the energy to do anything else. And I can say that from firsthand experience. And I think our society just wants this instant gratification so badly, and we play around with it in so many different ways. But when it comes to our health, trying to get instant gratification, and if somebody's selling you that they can give you instant gratification, like that should set off a red alarm, because it's just not real. And who knows what long-term effects of the stuff that we're seeing right now, long-term effects of Ozempic is going to be for a lot of the people that are taking it right now when they don't need to be taking it. The idea that being smaller is going to bring you more value is a deeper mental health issue. Again, it's connected. I noticed for me personally, I was trying to repair my metabolic damage all throughout my 20s. And I'd get really frustrated because I'd be gaining weight even though I was doing the same things that I had been doing and eating healthy and clean and taking care of my body and working out and all this stuff. And I was so hyper-focused on it. And then I noticed in the last, I'd say 2 years or so, my focus has been so much more on healing and building this business and helping other women and focusing on things that fuel me, that my body is not the front of mind anymore. And I finally learned how to start moving my body and nourishing my body and doing things that just feel good. And my body responded. I had gone to the doctor right before the wedding, and it was the first time I had stepped on a scale in a long time, and I realized I was at the same weight that I had been when I competed at Miss USA. That was a number I was fighting for so much of my 20s, thinking that if I just finally accomplished that, then I'd be confident, I'd get more value and all this stuff. And I really do think that once I mentally just let go of all the pressure I was putting on myself, and I just focused on taking care of myself, my body just kind of relaxed. And I could actually see it begin to change. And I was mind blown by the idea of that because I know how much effort I had put into it prior. And it just felt like if I wasn't putting a ton of effort into it, then it was not going to be sustainable. And it's the direct opposite. It is sustainable because it's a lifestyle and it's something that I'm not obsessing over all the time. So whoever needs to hear that today, just stop looking for a quick fix and start building a lifestyle that feels good. Figure out a way that you can move every day that just feels good, whether that's your hot girl walk so you can listen to this podcast, or if that's strength training, or if that's Pilates, HIIT, whatever feels good for your body, just do something because it's important for our overall health. And just don't have the focus and all the attention be on punishing yourself and trying to change yourself. That's the wrong approach. Again, could talk about that all day long. You can tell that these topics are very personal to me and that I've lived a lot of life with these topics up until 29 years old, because I truly could just ramble on it all day long. But I feel like we should get to just the overall lessons. And I just have a handful of bullet points here that I want to leave you guys with, because these are things that not only have I learned, but I'm continuously reinforcing. And I do feel like it has just allowed me to leave my 20s and go into this next chapter feeling like I truly lived my 20s. I understand how rare that is to say. I've said it to just a handful of close people to me, and the reaction that I've gotten every time is, you have no idea how lucky you are to say something like that. So many of us get caught up in living for other people and hustling to get to the next achievement, the next relationship, the next big thing. We don't slow down enough to just get to know ourselves and enjoy our 20s. You're only going to be this young and this healthy and with these friends and these opportunities for such a short period of time. Life is so temporary. Everything about it is temporary. The good things and the bad things. We're excited to hear that bad things are temporary, but it's also good things in the sense that we don't realize that we're in the good old days until they've passed. We all know those people that always talk about the past and how amazing things were and how they wish they could go back. That's because they weren't truly present and joy-filled in the moment. And it's really important to me that as I go into this next chapter of my life, that I remember that concept, because I constantly want to just slow down and realize that I am in the good days. I have a choice to make every day a good day. I get to choose how I navigate through this chapter, even if this chapter feels mundane. Even if there's nothing crazy or no big successes or no big accolades happening right now, I can still enjoy it without just constantly waiting for the next thing. And that's something that I didn't learn until very recently. When COVID happened, I mean, all of us obviously were stuck at home trying to figure out what's going on with our world. And something that Brendan and I did, we were living with my mom and my sister during COVID, is we got really intentional about celebrating every single small win, no matter how small it was, and celebrating life. I think that's synonymous with romanticizing your life and making sure that we were doing something every day that felt like a celebration. And I've carried that mindset with me over these past 3 years, that I try and do something every single day that just truly brings me joy. Today, I went and got lunch with a girlfriend. When I was starting my day, I'm like, I just need to sit down. I need to power through. I need to work. I have to run to my appointments real quick and then just get back and do more work. And when she asked me to meet her for lunch, I'm like, you know what? I could use just some good girl time, even if it's out of the way, even if I don't have that long. I'm going to go and I'm going to enjoy it. And it was so fueling. And now coming home, I'm excited to work because I already fueled a part of myself today. This is also something that I love. I love podcasting. And sitting here and being able to talk to you guys is something that just brings me so much joy. And that's why I started the podcast in the first place. And it's easy to put things that bring us joy on the back burner because we think that eventually, we'll get there, or we're just too busy. And instead of living that way, I try, even at the end of a shitty day, I'll pour myself a glass of my favorite wine because that's exciting and that's something I look forward to, and I will enjoy it. I will sit with my husband and we'll play a game, a card game. We've been big into, what's the game called? Roomy Cube. We'll play Roomy Cube. We'll sit outside and watch the sunset. We'll go on a walk with our dog. I'll call my mom. I'll go on a hot girl walk and take a little extra time. I will take a bath. I'll light a candle while I do my skincare. Stuff that just makes these moments feel special and bring a smile to my face. So many of us just don't do those things enough, or we wait for a special occasion to do something that just brings us joy. And I just encourage you to say that. Start just enjoying your life. Life is really short, but it's also long. And you get to choose how you want to spend your time. One of the biggest lessons that I've really learned, and I feel like I've said that so many times, so if you're annoyed with me by now by saying what I've really learned, I'm sorry, but playing this if-then game when it comes to our life. So many of us will be like, well, if I lose weight, then I'll be happy. If I'm in a relationship, then I'll be happy. If I get this job promotion, then I'll be happy. And you're going to be playing that if-then game for the rest of your life. You got to stop it. And the sooner you stop it, the more you can actually start enjoying and living your life. Okay, there's just a few more things that I want to touch on, and then I'm going to wrap this whole episode up. Like you guys can probably see, I'm very passionate about this because I just want people to start really enjoying life. And I think so many of us get stuck in doing things every day that we're not happy with, that we're not passionate about. We're in relationships that we don't absolutely love. We don't feel great about ourselves, but aren't doing anything to actually make those changes. And I just really want to encourage you guys that you only get this one life. And you deserve to invest in yourself. You deserve to feel amazing. You deserve to love what you're doing and who you're doing life with every day. Doing that internal work on yourself is going to pay off in literally every aspect of your life. And it's important too to know that your timeline and your journey is going to look so different than your girlfriend's. And that's okay. Like nobody's journey is right or wrong. If you do something earlier in life and I end up doing it later in life, there's nothing to compare because they're two completely different people, two completely different set of circumstances. But especially if you were like me and grew up in kind of like a traditional lens of seeing you meet somebody when you're in college or your early 20s and you settle down and you get married and you have a job and you just kind of do the traditional steps that society kind of places on us, that pressure that it places on us. I didn't realize how much I didn't want that until I got to New York and realized that people are living their best lives in their 30s and their 40s, and they're still not worried about like finding their forever person and settling down. Everybody's journey is just going to look different. So I think once you allow yourself to know that, you can stop putting so much pressure on yourself. No one is running the same race. So nobody's behind, nobody's ahead. Just ease up a little bit. Okay? Stop stressing yourself out so much. The last thing that I'm going to leave you with, something that's been really beneficial for me just in this last year, is having a hobby or a creative outlet. So many of us just were waking up and we're trying to take care of ourselves and we're going to work and then we're coming home and we're doing the best we can, but we're not incorporating stuff that makes us happy and is a hobby, something that we just enjoy. We recently started playing pickleball and tennis. And I'll be honest, I'm not that great at it, but I really enjoy doing it. It's just fun. And I think it's important to just implement the fun things that you want to do every day. It's the same concept of like romanticizing your life that we were talking about earlier, and having a creative outlet, whether that is a blog, if you like to write, if you like to read, if you want to start a podcast, whatever it is that fuels you creatively and inspires you, just take the time to do that because it really will benefit you. So that's, in a nutshell, over an hour in, the many, many lessons that I learned throughout my 20s, throughout this crazy chapter. And like I had mentioned earlier in the episode, that I realize how rare it is to say that I really do feel that I made the most out of my 20s. I lived all the experiences that I really wanted to live out. I'm proud of how I decided to live. I'm proud of my timeline. I'm proud of the things that I accomplished. I give grace to myself for the things that I didn't accomplish. Life doesn't stop after your 20s. I think people get so freaked out about getting older instead of realizing what a blessing it is to get older and to gain more wisdom and to live different chapters of your life. It's a beautiful thing. One is not better than the other. And so I'm actually really looking forward to my 30s. Obviously, I have no idea what the next decade is going to look like for me, but I have such a stronger sense of who I am, and I have so much more confidence in myself as an individual and as a woman. And I believe that that's because of the work that I did in my late 20s to really discover who I am. And because of that work, I just feel very optimistic about my 30s because I know who I am. I know what I like. I have created a career for myself that I really enjoy. I have a relationship that I absolutely love. I have people surrounded by me that are so full of love and support. And I'm just really grateful for all of the just joy that I have in my life. So going into this new season, I'm glad I get to bring all that with me. And we have some exciting travels coming up. We are going back to Europe for our 1-year anniversary, and it's right in between my birthday and Brendan's birthday. So I'm really looking forward to having 2 weeks, which is crazy, but 2 weeks to be able to just unwind and rest and just celebrate everything that this year has been. We've both been really trying to just work our asses off this year and make the most out of 2023. And again, I feel like we've done that, and that feels really good. We still have months left in this year, even though I feel like as soon as like October hits and Halloween hits, then it's basically just nonstop holidays. But for anyone that's listening that doesn't feel like they can close out this year, or if you're disappointed with what you've done up until this year, I just encourage you to not procrastinate until next year to try and take charge of your life again. So many of us will wait for the new year to just try and make resolutions and to try and make changes. And then when they don't stick, we get really hard on ourselves. So this is just your reminder that you still have time left in this year to actually take charge of your life and to make the changes that you want to make. If investing in your confidence and getting a stronger sense of yourself and trying to understand your mindset and switching your negative thoughts and just really working on yourself is something that you want to invest in, I highly encourage you to download my digital confidence course, because it really is a step-by-step manual to giving you the tools and the knowledge that you can implement to become the best version of yourself. It's literally everything that I have learned in my professional and personal life consolidated into 10 videos. There's so much value in it. So if you've resonated with anything that I've said throughout this podcast, or if you know somebody that could really benefit from it, or you're just curious, I mean, literally, what do you have to lose? I absolutely love our More Than community. There's so many of you that have been here since we first launched 3 years ago, and you really were my inspiration behind creating this confidence course. So it's important to me to give back to you guys, especially if you're some of the few that are still hanging in to this hour-long podcast. I want to give you guys a special discount code that if you want to sign up for the Fundamentals of Confidence, use code MORETHAN for a discount on your digital confidence course. I am so freaking grateful for you guys and for this community and just to have you guys in my corner. So thank you so much for the support and for the love. I'm going to be doing a breakdown of some of these lessons on our Instagram if you want to go over there and just see the bullet points broken out so you can save it, you can screenshot it, and you can start implementing some of these lessons into your own life. So this is my last podcast episode in my 20s. So excited. Next time I talk to you guys, I will be 30, flirty, and thriving. I'm so excited. So I will talk to you guys soon. Cheers, and I love you.